It began with a whimper, a thin, raw sound that cut through the quiet of a Sunday morning. I found him huddled beneath a maple, a yellow Labrador curled against the roots. He was smaller than he should have been, ribs showing through matted fur. When I knelt, he buried his head in my palm and seemed to unclench for the first time. His tail thumped like a small metronome, a fragile rhythm in the silence. He smelled of smoke and fertilizer and something older that my brain couldn't place. I named him Happy, a bandage on a wound I didn't understand. For months, we settled into a new rhythm. Walks by the woods, evenings past houses with trimmed lawns. He learned to wait, to sit politely. Then there was the house, set back beneath a sagging maple, its paint flaking like sunburn. When we neared it, Happy's whole body changed. He would stop, eyes fixed on the house as if it were a living thing. Sometimes he whined and tried to edge toward it. Sometimes he pulled back as if burned. He watched the darkened windows with a blend of longing and panic that made my skin crawl. One hurried evening I miscalculated, and we passed too close. Happy stiffened, then broke free. Leash ripped from my grip. He barreled through the yard. I followed, heart hammering. Tripping over a root into the garden, Happy was scrabbling at the soil with both paws, digging like a machine. He made no sound except the frantic rasp of his nails. I grabbed him behind the shoulders to pull him away and felt the damp give under his paws. Then fabric, a sleeve, a hand. The world narrowed. The smell hit me then. Old blood, dust, the particular copper of a closed life. I lifted Happy in an instinct that had nothing to do with logic and everything to do with panic. I ran. The cops were efficient in the blunt way of people who speak to the living about the dead. They unearthed a man in his early 30s. The coroner said blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. He had been dead for 5 months. 5 months, long enough for insects to finish their work. Long enough for a house to settle into silence. 5 months was almost exactly how long I'd had Happy. The house had been a rental. Aaron and Vicky, names the neighbors, offered like talismans, had been careful with smiles and stories. Nothing about them turned up in any real way. Vicky vanished. The police called her a person of interest, and then they called her a mystery. Speculation rippled through the neighborhood like distant thunder. Happy did not seem to care for the details. He slept more after that, as if some weight had been lifted. He also looked at that house differently. Less panic now, more an absolute terrible recognition. He would stare at the yard and sometimes whine, low and private. Nightly, I woke to find him at the foot of the bed, ears pricked toward the window, watching the road like a clock wound with grief. Weeks later, on a morning that smelled like just risen coffee and cut grass, Happy trotted to the fence and began to wag. I watched from the kitchen through the shrubs, because I liked the way he was content. And then he came back toward the house, wearing a collar that wasn't his. The one I had bought for him lay on the ground, neatly coiled by the fence board. The collar he wore had a tarnished tag. I read the name as though it might change the facts. Dennis. One side had the name, the other an address, the very house where the body had been buried. I ran to the street. No one. The tire tracks were only the ones that had been there long before, overgrown and indifferent. Happy barked once, a small, insistent sound, and then nosed my hand as if to say, "This is what it was. These are the bones of my world." He licked my palm and looked straight at me with an expression that felt like a benediction or a warning. I call him Dennis now, because names matter less than the acts that give them meaning. He rides shotgun when I drive past the house. He sleeps at my feet, and sometimes, standing at the window, I see him stare out at the dark line of the woods and the sagging maple. I imagine a man under that earth, reaching back and touching him like an old promise. The police filed reports, the neighborhood told stories. Vicky's name dropped like a stone into our conversations and made new ripples. The strangest thing, what unsettles me in the raw hours when the house is only a silhouette against my streetlight, isn't the mystery of the rent or the woman who left. It's the sense that loyalty outlasts breath. That what a dog remembers can demand a reckoning years after the human has stopped answering. At night, when Dennis wakes me with his soft paw at my knee, I let him climb into bed. He presses his head into my chest and exhales in the rhythm of someone who has found, finally, a place to lie down. I tell him his name. He wags. Sometimes, when the house hums and the trees lean like listeners, I think I feel a second weight in the mattress beside me, an absence shaped like a man, a footprint pressed into earth. I tell myself I was lucky to find him. I tell myself that the dead are simply dead. But sometimes, as the furnace ticks and the world sits small outside the curtains, Dennis lifts his head and stares at the backyard until his eyes burn with recognition, and I am left with the feeling that we did not discover the house's secret. It chose to be found.